Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Command Core studio. Welcome to the show. So start your engines, literally, because Aetherdrift is here. The preview season, the spoiler season has started. A lot has been spoiled already. Let's jump into them. So, yeah, that was a hectic 30 minutes right there, screenshotting everything I could while also then trying to put it together. And now I am talking about it with having seen the cards, but also not really comprehended some of them because I'm just like, oh, okay, screenshot this. Oh, wait, next card. Okay, next card. So here we go. This is all very fresh to me, and very fresh is the brand new mechanic keyword, whatever it is, start your engines. We see it here on Mendicant Core Raceway, a common land that says start your engines. If you have no speed, it starts at 1. It increases once on each of your turns when an opponent loses life. Max speed is 4. So, yeah, we have a way to essentially get to max speed. Max speed is 4, once on each of your turns when an opponent loses life. Now, here's the question with that, rules layers out there. Okay, once on each of your turns when an opponent loses life. Only once on a turn, or what if a separate opponent loses life? It's probably just once per turn. It probably takes 3 turns, essentially, after this comes into play, I would assume, to get up to max speed, if you're getting through. That being said, yeah, the potential can be quite big because, well, tap for a colorless, max speed, pay 3, tap, discard a card, draw a card. Just getting a free ability on a land, and you'll see these abilities get better and better. Yeah, it can be very powerful. And of course, these abilities are on other things too. Next up, we've got, Night Market. There we go. A land enters tapped. As it enters, choose a color. We can tap for 1 mana of the chosen color, or we can cycle it away. So, cycling decks out there, rejoice. Other decks out there that really care, I guess, about, specific land tapping for 1 color that, comes into play tap a bit slow. It's probably more so for cycling decks specifically. Next up, Almond Cat Raceway. Again, start your engine. See us on there again. Tap, 4 colors, max speed, tap, target creature gains haste until end of turn. That is very, very, very good. I mean, the actual, once you get to that point, essentially, I'm not saying this is going to see play in like every deck out there. No, because it does take time, obviously, to get to that max speed. That being said, yeah, certain lands that can grant haste, there's only a few of them out there. I mean, the red one that's like with legendaries comes to mind. That's quite expensive. So, yeah, for the right deck out there, if you got a, say, colorless deck, of course, like, obviously, all these colorless ones are like, oh, great, yeah, more options, just chuck them in the deck. If you have a monocolor deck, you can very easily fit utility lands as well. 2 color, yeah, maybe some, and then 3 color, you're kind of pushing a little bit once you get to, like, there, and definitely 4+. Next up, though, we've got Mendicant Raceway. This is a rare land. Again, start your engines on this one, too. Tap for a colorless. Max speed, it taps for 2. So, yeah, colorless decks out there are going to be like, yeah, why not just chuck this in the deck? At the very least, it's basically like a waste for you. And at the best, it's like, oh, okay, cool. Just tapping for 2 mana right away, like Crystal Vein, but without sacrificing. Or, what's the one? Ancient Tomb without taking the damage, too. So, yeah, it does take some time to get to, obviously. But, hey, once you're there, this is tapping for twice as much as it should. Moving on, we've got a vehicle token. Yeah, we did kind of get a little heads up that there's going to be a vehicle token. Now we know what it is. 3/2 token artifact vehicle that has crew 1. So there you go. I believe this is the very first vehicle token we've ever got. So yay! But yeah, 3/2. If you had on your bingo cards that was going to be a 3/2, there you go. You got it correct. Moving on. Okay, here we go. I finally got down Fibble Flip, after a while, and now we've got a brand new homunculus that I got to figure out the name of this one. That's so tough when there's no vowels. Verbose Host. Okay. Verbose Host. A 0/4 homunculus for 2 mana in blue. Start your engine. So yeah, we are seeing that on a legendary creature, a commander. So again, getting to that max speed, it might take a couple turns, but once you're there, well, here you go. You already have the max command size, which is nice to have. Max speed, if you draw a card, draw 2 cards instead. That is quite nice. Basically, like Teferi's Ageless Insight, essentially, but without the restriction. So, yeah, being able to just double up every single one of your draws, that is massive, especially on a commander that actually gives you no maximum hand size. So, yeah, blue players out there rejoice. Players out there who just love drawing an absurd amount of cards because, yeah, it's going to be like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, get a bunch of all these, miscellaneous effects that draw cards. I mean, you need some ways to essentially, get through and have your opponents lose life. But there's different ways to do that. Of course, certain lands that even just like land enters the battlefield, like Sun-Scorched Desert, and ping someone, that counts. Yay. You're going to have other kind of effects in play that, like, maybe just every single turn maybe can ping someone, or every single turn can drain someone, essentially. Or just, yeah, some low-to-the-ground evasive flyers, especially maybe some low-to-the-ground evasive creatures that maybe have, like, a hit an opponent, like draw a card, maybe if it's a loot effect, because keep in mind with like loot effects, draw, discard, you do go up in card advantage with this kind of a commander once you have that max speed. So yeah, take advantage of those effects. They're like, oh yeah, draw 1, discard 1, or whatever, or draw 3, discard 3, or draw 2, discard 2, whatever they are, because doubling that up means that you are actually gaining card advantage with that. And of course, just with regular card advantage, with repeatable card advantage, this can be absolutely absurd. So yeah, a really cool design for a commander, and I think this one's going to be quite popular because players, like to draw a lot of cards, so doubling that up is going to be huge. And no max command size, players don't like to discard things too, so yeah, you get the best of both worlds. Next up, we've got, okay, yeah, I just had some, the Boros versions in here. Cool, yeah, you've got that as well, so there you go. And then this is what the actual card for the Start Your Engines looks like. I think the backside has the 4 on it, so there you go. If you need that, cool. Moving on, the Aether Spark, the prize of the actual event, I guess. I don't know. I didn't really read the stories. Ledger Artifact Planeswalker equipment for 4 mana in total. So yeah, Ledger Artifact Planeswalker equipment. That's probably the first time we've ever seen all of that. It's an equipment that's also a Planeswalker. Interesting. 4 starting loyalty. As long as the Aether Spark is attached to a creature, the Aether Spark can't be attached and attacked and has whenever creature deals combat damage during your turn, put that many loyalty counters on it. +1, attach it up to 1 target creature control, put a counter on that creature. -5, draw 2 cards. -10, add 10 mana of any one color. Okay, this is pretty crazy. I mean, it's just like very off the wall again, being a equipment that's also a planeswalker and an artifact. All these things together, like you wouldn't expect that. I mean, again, your bingo card is just filling up right now, obviously, with all of that. But basically, it is something that, yeah, I mean, you throw it onto a creature that can hit pretty hard. Again, whenever it deals combat damage during your turn, put that many loyalty counters on it. That many. So yeah, toss this onto Ghalta or something like that, and it's like, oh, okay, cool. You just hit for all that much. Great. Awesome. Cool. Yeah, cool. And all of a sudden I get, I guess it would be 12, but plus the +1, 13. Let's say you got through with all of Ghalta, the original Ghalta's attack. Then all of a sudden you get 13 counters on this, and you can very easily, -5 if you want to draw 2 cards, or -10 if you want to get a giant boost of mana. Yeah, is this going to be for like every single kind of deck out there? Absolutely not. It is a very strange card. Again, it's like an equipment, but also a planeswalker, but also an artifact. Yeah, Super Friends decks could consider it, of course, if they have like certain creatures in there, or just like a bunch of Gideons that turn into creatures, etc., etc. But yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting card. It is one where if you just have a big beefy commander, again, like Yargle, Multani, or Ghalta or whatever, and you're hitting someone with that, all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, cool. I get a giant boost of probably mana is what you would go for most of the time. Like the drawing the cards is nice, obviously, but basically being like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I'll just add 10 mana. That's probably game ending for you right there with that amount of value. Next up. Okay, Mendicant Core Guidelight. This one comes from the Guidelight Voyagers. A star 3 robot ledger artifact creature. Powers equal to the number of artifacts you control. Start your engines. Again, that comes back to us. Max speed, again, is going to be a thing. Once you get to that max speed, whenever you cast an artifact spell, you may pay 1. If you do, copy it. Yeah, there's probably some broken things that you can do with that. So, yeah, first of all, having power equal to the number of artifacts you control, that can make them quite a bit throughout the game. Obviously, it doesn't adjust the toughness, which is probably a good thing. So it's actually, okay to be able to get rid of this, if you're an opponent. But yeah, that toughness, there's going to be other ways to, get it through or just protect it, give it indestructible, whatnot. It can hit really hard, though, and especially once you start getting going and casting artifacts, then paying an extra 1 to copy that so you get an artifact token to lead to more and more and more. Yeah, this can become quite huge, but yeah, I mean, the bigger thing is just you have an absurdly powerful artifact that you play, and you're like, oh, I get 2 of them now. Hooray. Yay. I'm sure there's some combos in there somewhere as well, but yeah, some absolutely disgusting things, I am sure. Moving on. We've got Guidelight Pathmaker. They showed these two side by side. A 6/5 vehicle for 6 mana and Azorius Vigilance. Enters, you may search life for an artifact card to reveal. Put it on the battlefield. Its mana value is 2 or less. Otherwise, put in your hand, then shuffle. this is a very interesting one because it is on enter, not on, well, cast or enter with a cast requirement. So essentially, again, being able to just go, oh, okay, I go get any artifact out of my deck, and all of a sudden it goes in my hand, or, yeah, again, more importantly, if it's a small artifact, which there are plenty of broken small artifacts. I mean, Icecrown Scepter comes to mind, of course. Mana value 2 or less, you just go, oh, it goes right into play. Awesome. Good for me. It's restricted to just an artifact, not like, go get a vehicle. No. Any artifact. So, yeah, I mean, this one definitely can see play. Of course, in vehicle decks, it is a vehicle itself, 6/5 vehicle with crew 2. Or, yeah, if you're looking for, like, kind of like a weird tutor, I guess, but not really all that weird, I guess. But 6 mana is a lot, but you get it right into play. There are more expensive tutors out there for that. So, yeah, if you've got, like, again, an artifact combo strategy, you could definitely consider this one. Keep in mind as well that this could be very good in an ETB deck if you are also utilizing, again, some pretty broken artifacts or very powerful artifacts. Even if you just have, say, like, you're going and getting mana rocks each time, that can still be very beneficial to you because obviously there's plenty of ways to blink things, especially creatures, and you can just crew to this and you're like, oh, okay, I blink it now with my blink creature effect, and all of a sudden it comes back and then I get the ETB again. So yeah, it can be a very, very good way to do that. I'm also sure, actually, there's probably some artifacts that, like, ETB blink something. Maybe not 2 mana, but there's definitely, like, Voyager Staff, which you can, like, pay to sacrifice to blink this again. So I guess if you really want to keep blinking things, you definitely can. So yeah, keep that in mind. Next up, though, yeah, we've got the revved up versions of these. So some pretty cool art with those. Then we've got Winter Cursed Rider, a 3/2 human warlock from the Speed Demons. That costs 2 mana in Dimir. Ward, pay 2 life. Artifacts you control have ward, pay 2 life. Exhaust, a brand new thing that we're going to be talking about right now. For 2 blue and a black tap, exile X artifact cards from your graveyard. Each of their non-artifact creature gets -X until end of turn. Activate each exhaust ability only once. And they kept saying in, like, the video, like, once each game. And it's like, okay, well, here's the thing. Like, if this ever gets dealt with, you replay it or you blink it. Yeah, blinking does reset it, I would assume. So yeah, you basically, like, all right, you use it only once while this exact card is in play. But of course, again, if you just simply blink it, you reset that. So this is a commander that is, again, exiling cards out of your graveyard. That is a requirement. That 4 mana is to obviously in the tap effect. But yeah, if you've got, like, ways to fill your graveyard with artifacts, that can be quite good. I do think it's interesting. It says each other non-artifact creature. So it's like, obviously this is not artifact, but it's like, you're not taking artifact creatures with it. So, yeah, being able to just wipe the board again, and yes, I mean, I keep saying again and again and again, but it's like, yeah, you just blink it, or you replay it, or whatever you need to do, essentially, you can do that again. But having a repeatable board wipe on a commander can be very, very, very powerful. Obviously, the one requirement is, hey, get artifacts in your graveyard, and that can be a pretty easy requirement if you build around it properly. I mean, there's ways to, like, mill half your library, so you're like, oh, okay, cool. And again, you can exile whatever amount you want. It's X artifact cards from your graveyard. You don't have to just exile every single one of them. It's dependent on what you want it to be. So it is kind of like Toxic Deluge-ish when it's like, you know, the specificity of it. So you can actually take out your opponent's creatures while keeping yours around. Or again, if you just build a bunch of artifact creatures in this deck, which you probably would, they don't get taken out anyways. So yeah, a repeatable board wipe, that can be quite good. And again, I do say repeatable. It is resettable, and I would definitely reset it quite a bit. So there you go. Next up, just some borderless revved up art of it. And then we've got the last ride. I apologize to everyone in the comments below who is like, it's probably gonna be Death Shadow. And I'm like, there's no way it could be Death Shadow. It's Death Shadow. 13 Ledger Artifact vehicle for a single black mana. The last ride gets -X for extra life total. Pay 2 and a black, pay 2 life, draw a card, crew 2. Okay, here's the thing and why this actually can still work for Commander. It's because, well, yeah, as a vehicle, yeah, you don't have to actually have it be a creature. Ever. Until you actually want it to be a creature. So this, at the very least, is efficient when it's costed at just 1 mana to get into play, but inefficient for the amount of mana you have to pay to do so. Greed. It's basically Greed, but you have to pay an extra 2 mana to actually activate that pay 2 life, draw a card. Greed, I believe, is just, again, pay a single black mana, pay 2 life, draw a card. So you're saving mana on the upfront cost of getting to play. You are paying a lot more to actually get that life total down and to draw cards, but obviously you're benefited to get the life total down. Because when you do, you actually can hit really hard with this. Obviously, at the very, most, it can be what, unless, I guess you have Phyrexian life in play or something like that, then you can go down to 0 and it's a 13-13. But still, being able to actually say, oh, okay, it's a, 10-10 and I'm at 3 life, Risky, but fun. So again, only certain commander decks out there, like my Selenia Dark Angel deck, which really isn't built around staying necessarily at that lowest life total and maybe caring if I had a 13-13 in play, but maybe. But yeah, specific commander decks that really care about loss of life, maybe life swap decks out there essentially, or just, hey, having an extra kind of greed effect can definitely help it out. It's pretty interesting, a very interesting card. Moving on to Loot the Pathfinder. Love him or hate him, Loot is back. A 2/4 Beast Noble for 5 mana in Tiber. Double Strike, Vigilance, Haste, Exhaust for a single green mana tap, add 3 mana of any one color. Exhaust for a single blue mana tap, draw 3 cards. Exhaust for a single red mana tap, 3 damage to any target. So again, each of these abilities can only be activated once, but obviously if you, again, blink it, replay it, whatever, and of course you are in a color 2 blanket with blue, then yeah, reset it, and all of a sudden you can activate all those again. And again, it does have haste, so you can activate them right away. Adding 3 mana of any one color, obviously it's a nice little burst of mana for you. Drawing 3 cards is probably the best out of all these, though, being able to like, oh yeah, just draw 3 cards, and kind of like Arcanus the Omnipotent but you know, limited with having to blink it or reset it essentially, and also have to pay the 1 mana to do so. 3 damage to any target. I guess this is kind of like a combination of Arcanus and Kamal. Interesting from my childhood. But yeah, being able to lightning bolt something or ramp as well, it can be quite nice. Double Strike actually is quite good with this, obviously. Just it being a commander, being able to just kind of, I don't know, like, I mean, Berserk is a card, but, you know, other kind of just miscellaneous pump effects that can go out of nowhere, and just, like, you can take an opponent out quite quickly with that if you're really going to go around this one kind of built, you know, in a, I guess not Voltron-y way, but I guess a Voltron-adjacent kind of way. That being said, yeah, I think most players are probably going to use this as, like, a toolbox-type commander, kind of like Garth-ish, essentially, but, yeah, being able to use a lightning bolt when you need it, being able to get extra mana when you need it, or being able to draw some cards and dig down, and, of course, reset with, like, Conjurer's Closet, etc., etc. Interesting. Moving on, we've got Far Fortune End Boss from the End Riders. A 4/5 Human Mercenary for 4 mana in Rakdos. Start your engine, so again, get to that max speed 4. Whenever you attack, Far Fortune deals 1 damage to each opponent. So that's 1 damage to each opponent just by attacking with anything. Doesn't have to be with this commander. They're starting to do that more and more often these days for this, but like, whenever you attack in general, doesn't have to be the actual card itself. Max speed of a source you control will deal damage to an opponent or a permanent opponent controls. It deals that much damage plus 1 instead. So instead of it being 1 damage to each opponent, it's going to obviously be 2 damage to each opponent, which is quite nice. But yeah, being able to essentially, oh, okay, cool, I'm just going to sit back, attack with my things. That's nice. You're going to have to build a lot of other things around it, though. This is the kind of a commander where it's most definitely going to be a group slug commander, which really leans heavy into helping that start your engines get there very quickly for that max speed anyways. So there you go. Rule Slayer is out there too. Please let me know on this one as well. I mean, I guess they're probably going to send out like a detailed explanation of start your engines. I don't think it's like counter based though, right? It's not like I get 1 speed counter, then 2, so you can't like proliferate it, I assume. But yeah. Anyways, a very fun commander where it's just like, yeah, group slug everyone, and all of a sudden your group slug effects deal 1 extra damage very, very quickly with this, and just by attacking with anything, extra damage can be had. Next up, we've got the borderless revved up version of it. Very cool. Then we've got Apocalypse Runner, a vehicle, a 6/5 for 4 mana in Rakdos. Tap target creature controlled power 2 or less, gains lifelink until end of turn. Can't be blocked this turn, and you can crew it for 3. Pretty specific. I mean, I guess for like a vehicle deck, yeah, I mean, always consider all the vehicles essentially, but also, yeah, if you've got like a, I guess, attack trigger deck or one that like wants to get specific creatures through, certain commanders that really want to just get through and get, you know, combat damage triggers, you can consider this one. Next up, we've got Red Shift Rocketeer Chief. A 2/3 Goblin Pilot for 2 mana in Gruul. Vigilance, tap, add X mana, any one color, X's Redshift's power. Spend this mana only to activate abilities. Exhaust for 10 in Gruul. Yeah, that's quite the ability right there. Put any number of permanent cards to your hand on the battlefield. Activate each exhaust ability only once. Okay, so again, this is kind of like our Galta-ish, kind of, mixed with Marwyn the Nurturer-ish, I guess. So being able to essentially utilize this in a giant way to activate itself, for the most part, obviously you need to like add either a red or a green if you chose red or green at that one color, and you got up to that power. Cool. Yeah, I mean, it can only activate abilities, so keep that in mind. Like, that is a restriction, obviously, and that does kind of take down like the potential brokenness of it, though. Of course, there are some combinations that you can do with that, like, what is it, not Relentless Assault, Aggravated Assault, whichever the one is the enchantment that costs 5 to activate. Yeah, this is yet another thing that can go infinite with that. Sword of the Prunes is another one. So, like, there are infinite ways to go about it, just activating those abilities. You're still only going to be able to just activate abilities with it, though. That being said, there are certain abilities that you could just, like, oh, I have another creature in play with an ability that, like, pings someone for 1. You got infinite mana to activate abilities, you can just win with that. That being said, this is kind of like, yeah, get some giant things in the deck. All of a sudden, get this thing's power up, you know, in different ways, like Blackblighter Forge, etc., etc. And all of a sudden, just dump your hand onto the battlefield. And then probably, I mean, maybe have some, like, creatures that have some giant ETBs. Maybe, like, replenish your hand, you know, in some ways. Cataclysmic Gearhulk, or whichever the one is the right one. The red Gearhulk, you know, draw some cards, you know, get some things in your hand again, and then probably have a way to, like, either bounce this back to your hand or a way to just take it out, sacrifice it, replay it, and then do that again. So you can actually cheat even more giant things into play, potentially. So yeah, this is a very fun commander. I would love to see some builds around it, and I'm excited to kind of tinker with it as well. Next up, we've got the actual borderless version of it, too. Very cool. I like that little painted mask thing on the front, like, ha ha ha. Okay. Then we've got Rocketeer Boost Buggy, a 3/2 vehicle for 2-minute ink rule. Whenever this creature attacks, create a treasure token. Exhaust for 3. This vehicle comes in artifact creature, put a counter on it, and it's got crew 1. So this one does have a way to get around, essentially, you know, not having to be crewed if you really want to do that. Only once, though. It does have exhaust for it, though. Attacking, making a treasure, though. There's just already going to be some decks that are like, yeah, any ways to make treasures? Great. Let me make the treasures again and again and again and again. Next up, Boom Mobile. Kind of like Batmobile. Very clever. 5/5 vehicle for 4 mana in red. Enters, add 4 mana of any one color. Spend its mana, only activate abilities. Exhaust for X2 in a red. This vehicle deals X damage to any target. Put a counter on this vehicle. Interesting that you get that mana back out of it right away when it enters. There's got to be some broken thing that you can do with that. I mean, actually, already. Technically, right, that this plus Deadeye Navigator is infinite mana for abilities. Is that correct? Just, okay, ETB, add 4 blue. A blink with my Deadeye Navigator. It comes back into play. ETB, add 4 blue. Yeah, that'd be infinite mana. Which then you could also just win. I mean, not win. You could take out one player, though, right? Because then you could just, on the last ETB, after you have, say, a trillion mana or whatever it is, be like, okay, I choose red this time. Actually, you can just get infinite mana of all colors with abilities because you can just keep getting extra blue, right? So infinite mana of all colors for just for abilities, though. And on the last one, you're like, okay, I put that into the exhaust ability and I ping an opponent for half a trillion or whatever it's going to be, okay? So yeah, this can definitely go infinite in some ways, which is interesting. Obviously, when it comes to just like ETB adding mana for abilities, though, you're probably going to want to, usually you would have this, I would assume, with a deck that has enough abilities, obviously, or with a commander that has a specific ability that you want to dump mana into as well. It's an interesting vehicle. It definitely is, but yeah, some combo potential there too. Really weird, like the Boommobile and the Deadeye Navigator. Magic's just weird in that way where it's like, yes, this ghostly ship person who just like, you know, paddles around with a little boat on a river. But also, if you give it a Boommobile, infinite. Magic makes sense. Moving on. Kadora, Heart of Alalia, if I could say that right. 4/2 Human Knight for 4 mana in Selesnya. When it enters, you may search life for a mount or vehicle card, reveal, put in your hand, then shuffle. If 1 or more counters will be put on a creature or vehicle you control, that many +1 counters are put on instead. I mean, that second part already is just pretty powerful. There are other, you know, types of creatures, other types of things that actually do that already. That being said, just at a base level, being like, oh, okay, cool. I give extra counters to things. That has a lot of potential and can be pretty broken, actually. And of course, on the ETB, searching for a mount or a vehicle, just the longer Magic's history goes on, the more powerful this can become because, yeah, you're going to get access to more mounts and vehicles. Obviously, with this set, giving you access to a good amount more. So yeah, this is definitely going to be built in mount, vehicle, tribal, maybe a combination of both, maybe one or the other, or it could literally just be built like straight up just counters if you really wanted to go about it in that way. So, a very cool one. Borderless version as well. And then we've got Lorin, Soul of Alalia, a 1/1 beast mount with flying for 2 mana in Selesnya, so one that you could tutor up if you really wanted to. Enters when it attacks while saddled, put a counter on each up to 2 target mounts and or vehicles, and it's got saddle 1. As a commander, probably a bit more limited on, you know, the types of, types that actually build around it mostly. Like, okay, yeah, you build around, like, yeah, mounts, vehicles, and, yeah, you maybe like Voltron this a little bit. It does have flying, so do keep that in mind. But yeah, I think for the most part, it's probably more like a contributing card in a deck versus actually just one that is kind of the mainstay, the commander itself, typically. Next up, BuW Work Ox. a 2/2 with some really cool art on the right. A 2/2 Ox Mount for 2 mana in white. I find it funny that like the actual like art of it on the left is just like very serious, and the right it's like very not serious. Whenever this creature attacks while saddle, put a counter on target creature. Sacrifice this creature you control with counters on them, gain hexproof and indestructible till end of turn. Saddle 1. This is a card that if you have a counters deck, if you have a deck that utilizes different kinds of counters, any kinds of counters essentially, usually +1 counters is probably what it's going to be. Yeah, this is a very, very good card that is kind of like a heroic intervention that just sits on the battlefield for you. So this is like, again, a combination of, oh, what's that one? Selfless Spirit? It's like Selfless Spirit meets heroic intervention, but for counters builds. Yeah, very, very good. I mean, at a base level, like, sure, okay, get it saddled, start attacking, and just start putting counters on things, but you're probably going to want it more specifically for decks that already have counter synergies to them. I mean, any kind of a commander that is just built around, like, +1 counters and getting them and everything, or other kinds of counters too, being able to just save them all from the vast majority, not all situations, but the vast majority of situations with indestructible and hexproof, that's huge. I mean, there's a reason why heroic intervention sees so much play. It is very, very good. Next up, we've got Zhor Glory's Past, a 3/2 zombie cat warrior, because that's the thing, that costs 2 mana in Orzhov. Start your engine. So again, max speed 4. Sacrifice another creature, surveil 1. Activate only once each turn. Wizards, why? Why, Wizards, why? I hate those words. Max speed, whenever a non-token creature controlled dies, create a tap 2/2 black zombie creature token. Okay, that's nice, and that doesn't say only once each turn this triggers. So yeah, this is a really cool commander. It is one that is a free sacrifice outlet, which is always a lovely thing. That being said, again, the activate once each turn makes it so that it's nice to have that. Again, with each trip on the tail, we can do that 4 times, right? I mean, 4 times in total, 1 per turn. But basically, you're limited to not doing that any more than that. And also, like, if someone's going to board wipe and you'd rather just, like, sacrifice your creatures to get, like, value out of them instead of, like, them getting exiled like a farewell, you're like, I sacrifice 1 of my creature. Oh, no, the rest I can't. Oh, no. So, yeah, you're going to have other sacrifice outlets in the deck, which there are tons of them in these colors, you know, Viserys here, etc. But, yeah, being able to do Surveil 1. Surveil is technically better than Scry in most situations, getting things in your graveyard. But, yeah, being able to replace your non-token creatures with zombies, that's quite nice. Keep in mind those do come into play tapped, so that is something to keep track of. That being said, yeah, being able to be like, oh, okay, cool, aristocrat style strategy with a commander that is a light version of a sacrifice outlet, but also gives you the huge benefit whenever you're sacrificing things. Yeah, so as a commander, this can be quite spicy. And then, of course, I mean, definitely in the 99 aristocrat style decks as well, so definitely keep that in mind. But yeah, I mean, it does have, you know, a couple of relevant creature types too. It's zombie, cat, and warrior. So there you go. So other things to consider as well. Very cool commander. Next up, though, the borderless version of it. Very cool. Moving on, Basri, tomorrow's champion. Why not the champion of today? 2/1 Human Knight for a single white mana. Pay a white, tap, exert Basri. Create a 1/1 white cat creature with lifelink. Exert creature 1 tap during next untap steps. This is bringing back the Almond Cat essentially effect. Cycling for 2 in a white. Discard away, draw a card. When you cycle this card, cats you control gain hexproof indestructible until end of turn. I mean, this is a shoo-in for cat tribal because, again, apparently we needed 2 heroic intervention type effects in the same set, but both, again, pretty specific. One of them for counters, this one a bit more specific for cats. And this one's only on cycle, though. Do keep that in mind. So, of course, like, as a card in the 99 of a cat deck, yeah, it could definitely see play. Again, just like, oh, yeah, I cycle this away, I draw a card, I protect my team. Keep in mind that with cycling as well, like, unless your opponent has some kind of a stifle effect, which counters an activated ability or an ability or whatever it is, yeah, they're not stopping this. This is like an uncounterable, I protect my entire team spell in a way, because it's off the cycle, it's not on a cast or anything like that. So that is quite nice, so definitely consider that, on top of, like, drawing a card when you do so as well. But yeah, when it comes to, like, this being a commander itself, like, maybe, I mean, it's better, it's definitely better in the 99. Like, as a commander, it's like, okay, I get it out turn 1. Yay! Turn 2, I exert it. I make a 1/1 with lifelink. Okay, next turn, I don't untap it. Next turn after that, I untap. I make another cat. Next turn, no untap. Yeah, it's a bit slow for that. Like, obviously, you can have other ways to untap, but essentially to get around that, technically, there's definitely infinite combos with it too, like Intruder Alarm, any kind of, like, a mana dork as well. Like, the exerting doesn't matter then really that much. But yeah, I think more so it's going to be a card in the 99 of cat decks. It's pretty much a shoo-in for those decks with, yeah, it being basically like an uncounterable heroic intervention. Quite nice. Next up, Crypt Caller Chariot. A 5/5 vehicle for 4 mana in black. Menace, whenever you discard one or more cards, create that many tap 2/2 black zombie creature tokens, crew 2. I love the design of this. This actually doesn't even need to be a vehicle to be good for the decks that actually want it. I love, love, love discard benefits, essentially. There's not too many ways to like get massive benefits off a discard. And typically, yeah, it's not going to be this good. And this is like, hey, you know what? Just discard cards, and all of a sudden you make a bunch of 2/2s. Like, discard, if you've got a commander, if you've got an outlet that you discard one at a time, like, okay, discard, make 1, discard, make 2, discard, make 3. Yeah, Eula's Influence is one of my favorite cards of all time. This is like, kind of like around the same-ish, where it's like, instead of like discarding specific cards for it, it's like whenever you discard a card, you get that benefit. So yeah, any kind of like a discard strategy, we'll love this. If you happen to have a vehicle strategy, like, you know, it's still a 5/5 with Menace with crew 2, which is quite nice. And also if you are discarding cards, yeah, you're making, yeah, that. And it does say, like, you know, create that many tapped 2/2. So again, keep in mind, it's 1 or more that many. So even if you're wheeling as well, that's a great way to make an absurd amount of zombies. So yeah, this does have some relevance, especially when it comes to wheel decks. I mean, yeah, there's a certain Esper commander out there that works with zombies that's like, hey, you know what? Let's just draw a bunch of cards and discard a bunch of cards, make even more zombies. That can be quite nice with that as well. Moving on. Atchik? Let's go with that. Emerald Radiant, a 3/3 Insect Druid for 6 mana in Golgari. Enters, create a 1/1 green insect creature token for each artifact and or creature card in your graveyard. That can be quite a bit. Whenever another insect you control dies, put a counter on Atchik. Each opponent loses 1 life. Yeah, I mean, this is a commander that kind of gives you the blueprint for what you want to do. Get a bunch of insects or artifact creatures for each get a bunch of artifacts and or creatures in your graveyard, make a bunch of insects, and then probably sacrifice them essentially with like a Viscera type effect, free sacrifice outlet, and then drain your opponents and make this huge. So yeah, you can definitely win in a couple of different ways with this. I mean, making 1/1 insects, you can go wide with it, you can go kind of tall with this commander itself, or you can just drain your opponents out as well. Keep in mind, it is on enter. It's just on enter, not like a cast trigger. It's not when you cast it. It's not enter with it. It's not enter when you cast it. So yeah, you can use and abuse this. There's not many blink effects when it comes to like these two colors. Obviously, like Conjurer's Closet, sure, yes. But like you don't have blue, you don't have white, and those are the 2 blink colors typically. You also don't have like the temporary clone effects like in red. What you do have though, sorry green, you don't really help with that very much. You don't really come to the table with anything when it comes to this, but black has though like feign death type effects. So like if you have a sacrifice outlet, like a free one like Viscera, you're like, okay, I cast feign death on this, it's going to die. Instead of it dying, basically it hits the graveyard, comes back, and then all of a sudden I get that ETB again. So that can be quite huge to kind of have a turn where like once you're set up properly, and again, there's plenty of ways to mill yourself very quickly with this, and even ways to be like, okay, I swap my graveyard with my library, or like I just mill myself a ton, mill half my library, whatever it's going to be. Get all those things in your graveyard, make like 20 or so insects with this ETBs, and then sacrifice this, you know what I mean, drain your opponents, and then also, you know, feign death it, and then bring it right back. There's ways to like very quickly take your opponents out once you get yourself set up properly. Obviously, if you can defend your graveyard and keep protected, that is a good way to go about that. And next up, the borderless version of it. Very cool. Moving on. Thunderous Velocipede, insect vehicle thingy. But it's just a vehicle, not an insect for some reason, even though I think they said the thing that's like made out of their fallen insect brethren or something like that. I don't know. 5/5 artifact vehicle, trample for 3 mana in green. Each of the vehicle and creature you control enters an additional counter on it if its mana value is 4 or less. Otherwise, enters with 3 additional counters on it. Through 3. Yeah, that's kind of spicy. So again, this applies to not just vehicles, but also creatures. So that is huge in the amount of decks that's going to see play in. This, I mean, I'm just thinking about like Azuri, essentially. I mean, like, okay, tiny creatures, but also now they get 3 extra counters on them, essentially. So that's quite nice. Yeah, I mean, I guess that one, would that cancel that out? I don't know. Anyways, like small creature tribal, essentially, is definitely a deck that could utilize this quite well because, again, getting 3 counters on it, it's like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, that's nice. Each of the vehicle with an additional counter on it made of like, oh no, this is actually big creature tribal. Never mind. Otherwise, there's 3 additional counters on it. So again, if it's a bigger thing, it enters with more counters on it. That makes more sense. Yeah, this is just good in any kind of a counter strategy, I guess, just in general, because you're going to be getting at least one, if not more, counters on something. And of course, vehicles can use it as well. So yeah, they get themselves to kind of like start up at a higher amount. Yeah, I mean, this is just a solid card for go wide strategies, solid card for counter strategies, solid card for creature-based strategies, vehicle strategies. It's a solid card. Next up, we've got Sita Varma, Mask Racer, Sita Varma, a 2/3 human rogue for 2 mana in, oh my goodness, Simic. I was going to say Selesnya. No, Simic. Exhaust for X green and a blue. Put X counters on it, then you may have the base power and toughness of each other creature you control become equal to this creature's power till end turn. Oh my gosh! Oh man, like out of nowhere. I mean, your opponents will probably see it coming, right? They're probably going to see it coming when you're just like holding up like all this mana over here, and then you swing with a bunch of tiny creatures, and your opponents are like, what's going on? And then you're like, dump all the mana into it, get a ton of counters on it, and all of a sudden, base power toughness, it's going to have, yeah, all the other creatures just hit hard. Okay, so like with this one though, again, like what I'm saying with exhaust, it says activate each exhaust ability once. Again, you're in blue, you got blink effects, just blink to reset it essentially, so that's nice. So essentially with this one, yeah, I mean, you could save up a bunch of mana to like dump this into the X if you really want to, which is quite nice. But also if you just throughout the game, like have like some pump effects for this, if you've got like anthems in play, if you've got like Blackblade or Forge on it or whatnot, again, it's based on this creature's power, not based off of like the number of counters that are placed on it, so do keep that in mind. But yeah, being able to, you know, be a little flexible with that X is quite nice, but at the very least, you can just pay 3 mana to basically turn all your creatures into, again, let's say it's got 10 power, 10 10s, which is huge. That is massive. So yeah, the way I would build around this, most likely, and again, this is just off the top of my head right now, like the Flying Men type strategy, a bunch of low-the-ground evasive creatures, get them in play, you know, ramp, have some pump effects for this, of course, maybe have some anthem effects that already are pumping your team in general, but then, of course, just be like, oh, okay, I pay 3 mana plus the X or whatever I want to put into that, and swing out and hit you all for an absurd amount because, yeah, my tiny little 1/1s are now like 10 10s or whatnot. So, yeah, it's a very cool commander. I like that a lot. And there is the borderless version of it as well. Next up, Rangers Aether Hiive, a vehicle that costs 3 mana. That is a 3/5 in Simic. Vigilance, whenever you activate an exhaust ability, creating 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature, token with flying, crew 1. This one's probably pretty specific. Obviously, if you've got like a commander that is all about exhaust and has like exhaust abilities, and you're planning on using it a lot, cool, you can make a bunch of tokens throughout the game with it. Absolutely. Other than that, yeah, maybe a vehicle deck, a 3/5 vehicle Vigilance with crew 1. Maybe if you got some exhaust abilities, and that's quite nice. And again, those Thopters can help you crew, which is cool. Next up, we've got Captain Howler Sea Scourge. I love these sharks. 5/4 Shark Pirate. Anyone street sharks? No? Okay. Ward 2, pay 2 life for 4 mana in Is It. Whenever you discard one or more cards, target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn for each card discarded this way. Whenever that creature deals combat to a player this turn, draw a card. Quite interesting. Quite nice. Being able to... And I would assume that you can actually stack these. So yeah, if you discard one or more cards, again, for each discarded card, that is kind of like... If I discard, let's say, 5 cards, okay? At the same time, like a wheel type effect. That's +10/+0. That's quite nice, obviously. But I think you only get that, like, whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player this turn, draw a card. That's only on it once, I would assume. Rules lawyers out there help me out. But I believe that would only happen once. Whereas if you were to individually discard cards, I would assume, like let's say you had, like, a free discard out. Let's like, okay, discard 1 card, do this. Discard 1 card, do this. If you had that, I would assume you could discard those cards individually and stack that whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player this turn, draw a card. Maybe not, though, because it's not like giving it to the creature. I'm not sure. That being said, if you could stack it, that'd be nice because you draw a lot more cards. Regardless, at the end of the day, you could also just spread it out to like a couple different creatures all of a sudden and be like, okay, I've got 5 creatures. I discarded 5 cards one at a time. Each of them get +2/+0. Each of them has my deal combat damage to draw a card. Yeah, again, low to the ground, evasive creatures is probably where you want to go with this with some discard synergies too, as well as some wheel effects because, yeah, some big... spicy, like, okay, I have everyone, you know, discard their hand, draw 7, discard your hand, draw 7 again. All of a sudden, it's like +14/+0 to something, or even more than that. You can do a lot with that. Cool. Some really cool art right there as well. Street Sharks. Next up, Boosted Sloop, a 3/3 vehicle with menace for 3 mana. And Is It whenever you attack, draw a card, and discard a card. Crew 1. Interesting, again, that's like, we're having these, like, whenever you attack just in general, again, versus, like, this has to attack to get that effect. It's just, like, even if this on the field, with even if it's not crewed, if you just have any other creature attack, you get that trigger, which is quite nice. So, yeah, this could definitely see play in Decks that I guess like to be low to the ground and attacking. Decks that you know, want vehicles, obviously. So there you go. Looting decks. Moving on, Shandra is back. Spark Hunter and on a bike. 4/4 Legendary Planeswalker Shandra for 4 mana in red. Beginning of combat your turn, choose up to 1 target vehicle you control. Until end of turn, it becomes an artifact creature and gains haste. Nice. +2, you may sacrifice an artifact, discard a card. If you do, draw a card. 0, create a 3/2 colorless vehicle artifact token with crew 1. Almost said creature token right there. -7, you get an emblem with whenever an artifact you control enters this emblem, deals 3 damage to any target. This is a very specific kind of a commander. I mean, one that, like, if you do have, like, an artifacts deck, that can be great because obviously it's like, okay, artifacts entering the battlefield, lightning bolt, everything. That is quite nice. Yeah, sacrificing artifacts, discarding cards to draw cards. There are some benefits for that as well. Creating a bunch of vehicle tokens, sure. Like, maybe in a vehicle deck you consider this one. Again, like, giving, like, one of your vehicles, you know, just turning it into an artifact creature and giving it haste is quite nice. So, yeah, vehicle decks consider it. But, like, outside of that, very specific artifact decks, yeah, probably want to consider this one too. Moving on, Kaladin Triumph Chaser. I guess I forgot to mention, like, as always with all planeswalkers, like, sure, super friends too. 2/3 Human Pilot for 2 mana in Boros. Mounts and vehicles control of haste. Whenever a mount you control enters, comes saddled until end of turn. When a vehicle control enters, comes artifact creature until end of turn. Very aggressive mounts and vehicles. Yeah, sign me up for that. Basically, just, hey, okay, all of a sudden, you just all come into play, and you're going to be just swinging right away. You just considered saddled. You're considered, you know, a vehicle. I guess it's kind of funny that one has, like, a term for it. Like, mounts are saddled versus vehicles, like, becomes an artifact creature. It's not, like, crude. Like, couldn't I just say crude? I don't know. Anyways, being able to just, like, swing with them right away can be great because, obviously, some vehicles have a very low cost. Like, I'm talking about, like, some are, like, at 1, but they have, like, 6 for crew. So, yeah, if you can just get those out very quickly, again, say, come here, it's very low to the ground, and swing right away, you can be incredibly aggressive with this. On top of that, you can do some sneaky things like, again, because it gives your mounts and vehicles haste, let's say you have, like, a massive blink effect as well. You, like, mass blink your vehicles or mounts or whatnot, and even if your vehicles weren't creatures, you could still, like, crew them, essentially, to make them into creatures, but you, like, kind of waste it. You just kind of crew one to crew another to crew another, if you know what I mean. But yeah, basically, you could just then blink all of them if you have, like, those, like, blink all your creature spells, essentially. Bring them all back into play, and again, they all enter again, and they all have haste, so you can swing right away again with them, which is quite nice. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting commander that can, like, the way I would see it is probably, like, obviously, mounts, vehicle tribal, as well as, like, some, I mean, ways to help you be very aggressive, some pump effects, too. But, of course, yeah, some blink effects, some mass blink effects, of course, to kind of reset things as well. Next up, though, Cloudspire's Sky Cycle. 2/3 vehicle with flying for 4 mana in Boros. Vehicle enters, distribute 2 counters among 1 or 2 other target vehicles and a creature you control. Crew 1, yeah, pretty simple vehicle. One that, yeah, I mean, I guess for vehicles, it's like, all right, cool, I get more counters on my vehicles and or creatures. So it's pretty specific. Anyways. Next up, though, the information. There we go. This is the last spoiler for right now. The pre-release on February 7th, the MTG Arena release February 11th, and everywhere else February 14th. So, yeah, less than a month away from the release of all of this. Thank you for sticking with me through all the spoilers. There were a ton of them. There's also the kind of box spoilers from the actual pre-cons, too. I'm going to be doing a separate episode on those because I'm going to go deeper down into what kinds of cards work well with those commanders. Stay on the lookout for those. Stay on the lookout for all the spoilers and quick takes of spoiler season. Yeah, stick around. And with that, this episode is coming to a close. Comment below with your thoughts on it. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.